The Power Play Post Show is on the air, covering minor league hockey since 2003, and now covering the Binghamton Black Bears with news, reactions, and in-depth interviews only heard here. And now, from the Box Studios in Kirkwood, New York, here are your hosts of the Power Play Post Show, Bob Howard and Taylor Welch.
I promise you this, he texted me last night. Obviously, me and him are really close. He trusts me, in my opinion. He knows I know my body, and, I get a little emotional about it because he puts so much trust into me, and all the guys trust him so much. He just texted me last night and said, go up to the rink in the morning, give it a try, see how you're feeling, and I didn't even text him back.
Do you want to face Jerome Bouchard?
I do.
You do? I know you do.
I love Boomer, and he kind of taught me a lot as far as coaching goes. I was an assistant coach for him, so I think it'd be a pretty cool matchup to face Columbus, previous team I worked for.
And hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Power Play Post Show. This is the show for April 27th, 2026. This is season 15 and episode number 68 and episode number 582 in the long-running podcast that is the Power Play Post Show. Hello, everyone. I am Bob Howard, and she is
Taylor Welch.
And Taylor, that was Mac Jansen talking first about his trust in Brant Sherwood. And that was Brant Sherwood. That little clip there, I was really hoping was going to mean a lot more than it did from Brant Sherwood. He was kind of hoping for Columbus to win and make it to the finals. Instead, the Pee Dee IceCats did. And we'll be talking a lot about the Pee Dee IceCats probably in Thursday's telecast that we'll do. But let's talk a little bit about what Mac Jansen said. And just to remind everybody, because this is a pretty emotional part of the interview that we did with him after the game on Sunday.
I promise you this, he texted me last night. Obviously, me and him are really close. He trusts me, in my opinion. He knows I know my body, and, I get a little emotional about it because he puts so much trust into me, and all the guys trust him so much. He just texted me last night and said, go up to the rink in the morning, give it a try, see how you're feeling, and I didn't even text him back.
Taylor, the fans in the FPHL that don't know the Binghamton Black Bears players, the fans that in the FPHL that don't know Brant Sherwood, do not understand the connection and the bond that he has built with players that come here or players that he has played with before or coached with before, that type of thing. And Mac Jansen, who was very upset on Saturday because he couldn't play, and he was sitting up in the press box and he was telling me this and telling us in the post game that he had to sit down and watch the team just not perform well, and he couldn't do anything about it to help, and then goes in on Sunday. And this is the story. I don't care what anyone says. Mac Jansen won us 2 games against the Port Huron Prowlers, and you could see and you could hear the emotion in him when he gave us that answer. And Taylor, your thoughts on that?
I mean, I think it's great. Jansen really came through for us, against Port Huron. And I think Sunday is a great showing of that. I mean, he got 2 goals for us. And you can definitely tell, even before he starts saying that he gets emotional about it, you can just feel the emotion in it, basically. And as soon as you start hearing him kind of break down, it just shows you how much all of this truly means, and that it really is more than just a game to a lot of these guys, and that, they really are just this huge family, and that they all really care about one another. And sure, Jansen and Brant know each other outside of Binghamton, but a lot of these guys have created something so special here, and a lot, that has to do with Brant Sherwood. He's really the bottom line in all of this. And, for Jansen to say that he's got so much trust in him, and, the trust goes both ways on that street. And I feel like that's something that I don't want to say isn't happening for other teams, but I don't think it is to the extent that it is here in Binghamton. I really truly do believe that what Brant has done with his team is unlike anything else throughout the league. And I will stand by that 100%. And you can just tell, talking to any of the players, the way that they speak about Brant and the way that Brant speaks about his players.
100%. And the other thing that I want to say that, when you heard Matt Graham talk about, the $1 billion players, and he was actually referring to Mac Jansen. Matt Graham doesn't know what's going on in Binghamton in any way, shape, or form. Neither does Chris Paulin. And I understand how upsetting it was to lose twice in the semifinals to the Binghamton Black Bears. But with no doubt, you cannot win 3 championships without having a brotherhood, a family. And as Andreas Johansson has said many, many times, the Power Play Post Show and all the fans of the Binghamton Black Bears are a part of that family. And we get to bring players onto this show for you to get to know. No other team in the league has that much access to their fans or gives that much access to their fans than the Binghamton Black Bears. And truly, when you see so many fans go down to the corners and want to be there and do that, that's one level of this. The other level is the love that's in that locker room. Remember what Kyle Steffen said last year? The belief in this room is unmatched. And honestly, this brings us into the first thing I wanted to talk about. The thoughts on reaching the finals for the 3rd straight season is when, it's an amazing feat. It doesn't happen that often, and it hasn't happened that often, and it's great. But I'm sure there was a few people after Saturday night's game that thought, I don't know if this is going to happen if Port Huron plays the same way as they did and Binghamton plays the same way they did. But once you inserted Mac Jansen back into the lineup and you went into that first 20 minutes of the game on Sunday, it's like the feeling was completely different. You could tell by the way they were playing, Taylor, that it was just a different game right from the beginning.
Yeah, definitely. And I think this kind of circles back to Brant talking about how many leaders they have on this team. And, we've talked before about Tyson having the ability to literally take the team, put it on his shoulders, and go out there and make sure they come out with the win. And I feel like that's what Mac Jansen did in the series with Port Huron, is he did what he needed to do. He knew his role and his line, and his line mates knew his role as well. They were that's the thing that I think was lacking a little bit in Saturday's game was we talked about, guys just not communicating. There was just not connecting on passes. There was a lot of stuff that just was not happening for Saturday's game. And, Jansen will talk about how he really talks to, Bondarenko and Stubbs. And
yes,
he knows that he's the guy that's going to score and he's the guy that's going to shoot, and they're going to do what they can to set him up for that. That's what the line's there for. So we talk about the depth on this team and how you could take anybody and plug them in and you can expect them to score. But at the same time, you're in playoff hockey mode now. So you want your Mac Jansen out there. You need the guy that you rely on to get you a goal if that's what it comes down to. Because, Thursday's game, it was a 1-goal game. Nothing else happened. That one goal made the difference. So you definitely, you're going to be relying on probably Mac Jansen, and I'm perfectly fine with that. I think the team is perfectly fine with that. I think Stubbs and Bondarenko, Bondarenko has been the assist man all year. So, it definitely doesn't surprise me that it really came down to Mac. But at the same time, I was telling Jeremy, I was like, Cooper is such a solid goalie that I was like, you almost need those guys like, Sirota or Tyson or even Swain to kind of get those dirty, greasy goals, because it didn't seem like anything else was going to get past Cooper. But, I'm not surprised that it was Jansen, and I truly think there are so many guys on this team that could be leaders. And, I had said something to you earlier about getting able to go down to the players' corner this year and just really getting to know these players kind of outside of hockey, but also just after the games and stuff. And, kind of just seeing everything happen and getting to know a lot of families and stuff like that. It really kind of, I don't want to say it changes your perspective on things, but I think it does. Gives you a better understanding of things.
It does.
If you just go to a hockey game to watch a hockey game, that's fine and dandy. But if you're truly understanding what's going on and you want to know all the inner workings, that's kind of the huge part of it, is what goes on behind the doors.
Yeah.
Not so much what's happening out on the ice, because at the end of 60 minutes, it doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah.
And I think that was a huge thing, after the game, is I was like, part of me was like, well, this handshake line is going to be really interesting. But
and it really
at the same time, you talk about how there's players on Port Huron that are friends with the guys on Binghamton. So it really is, that final buzzer goes off and, well, Port Huron was upset that their season was over and we got to continue. There's nothing but love between a lot of these guys. And I'm sure there's still, like Paulin and Sherwood probably really dislike each other, but at the end of the day, it's still a game. So, you got to do what you got to do. But yeah, hockey is just, it seems like it's becoming so much more, and I'm getting to understand a whole new side of it this season.
Yeah, no, 100%. Okay, so thoughts on reaching the finals for the third straight season. I think and what's interesting about this is in a couple weeks will be your anniversary of joining the Power Play Post Show on air. You had been writing, obviously, the Impact Players Report, but in a couple weeks you'll be celebrating your 1 year anniversary of joining the show and doing probably close to 80, maybe 90 episodes so far, which is insane to talk about, and congratulations to you on that. But this is the third finals in a row that the Black Bears are a part of that I'm able to cover it, and I'm so very, very grateful for that. And to me, there is no bigger accomplishment for a team to be able to go to the finals 3 times in a row. It doesn't happen much. I have the numbers, and I will probably be posting the numbers of teams that have won 3 straight championships in a row in hockey, in North American hockey, so people can see how insane this is. But Taylor, as a fan that has watched this from the sidelines and now getting a glimpse of the behind the scenes a little bit yourself, your thoughts on the Black Bears doing this now 3 years in a row?
It's impressive. It is an impressive feat. I wanted to say shocking, but at the same time, I'm kind of not shocked by it. And I don't know if that's just, we came into the season pretty much, from the get-go, we were kind of like, could they be better than last year? And then they kept just proving us wrong, from the start. They came right into the season hot and heavy, which is something they didn't do last season. It was a slow start for quite a few people. And it took a while for some of the players to get their legs under them, where this season they came right in firing. And so, yeah, I'm not really shocked to say that it happened. Mm-hmm. And it's almost like a weird feeling because, at the beginning of the season, if you had asked me if we would be here now, I would probably say yes. And I don't want that's not like a pride thing. I just truly believe what is here in Binghamton, to get to that cup, you have to come through Binghamton to get it. That's just, and I don't know if I'm just spoiled that way, because I've really been paying attention. Last year was probably the first year that I was closely paying attention, but the year before that was really my first solid year of coming to every game. So, I'm kind of, I don't know, maybe I'm just kind of this is where the cup is going to live from now on. And if you want to come get it, you got to come take it from us. And so I don't know. It's impressive. It definitely is. The teams are getting better each year. I keep saying that. Even Brant will say that, it's harder to get here as the years go on. But I truly just think that, it just goes to show honestly what Brant has done here. And it only took him 3 years, but he finally got coach of the year. So we're making steps in the right way with the league. I think they're finally starting to look away from Binghamton as the kind of the hated league or the hated team. It seemed like everybody had stuff to say about us, and I feel like it's a little bit less off us, even though everyone doesn't want us to do a 3-peat again, because we'd be the only team to do that. So it's kind of hit or miss with the fan bases about how they feel as Binghamton could be going at it again. A lot of them want Pee Dee to come in and take it, and the people are saying that Pee Dee isn't the same team, and I don't know. I mean, I do agree they're not the same team that we saw. They had a lot of different changes made, but it'll be a tough battle, and I think that's kind of the whole point. Is you don't want to come into the finals and be like, oh, well, this is going to be an easy win for this team or that team. You want it to be the best of the best. You want the good hockey. The Port Huron series, that was great.
It was.
It truly was. It was great hockey. And, I truly, I applaud Port Huron for playing that series the way that they did, because they didn't play like they've played the rest of the year, which is, against what they said they were going to do. But still, they truly did play great hockey. And I really do applaud them for that. And even Paulin, that last, his interview that he did after the game, people were shocked to see what he had to say. And I agree. Like, that was probably the best thing that he's ever done this season. And I was kind of taken back by some of the stuff that he said. But, you know, I'm very excited that it's happening again. And I hope that the cup stays here in Binghamton. I'm kind of getting used to it.
When people listen to what Brant Sherwood said in full, and I know that B&G has released some of the audio and some of the video that they shot as we were talking to Brant Sherwood and Max Jansen. You guys are going to hear all of it right here on the Power Play Post Show, as we usually do give you all of that information and that content. Port Huron, we talk about a little bit about Port Huron and the fact that they're probably better this year than they were last year, which made this year's semifinals that much harder, bringing in the 3 D1 players and having them on the same line. And, you know, Reggie Millette was obviously so very good throughout the season, but also in the playoffs as well. Do you feel that Port Huron is a better team this year in the semifinals than what we saw last year in the semifinals?
Yeah, 100%. I truly think, because I feel like they kind of gave up the goon aspect of, you know, the way that they played their style of hockey. And, you know, I think we kind of labeled Port Huron as, you know, that's what they were, is they wanted to fight. They wanted the physicality. They wanted the penalties kind of stuff. But I do feel like they still kind of played their style of hockey, just without all the extra stuff added in there.
Sure.
And so for that aspect alone, I truly think that they did a lot better this season. And they just seemed more in control. Okay. They seemed well put together, kind of, you know, like they had things going for them, especially in Saturday's game.
Yeah.
They definitely knew what they were doing. They definitely came in there, you know, they knew what they wanted to do, and that's exactly, they executed their style very well. And that's, you know, we just didn't execute. And that was something that it happens, you know?
Yeah, it was evident. But it was evident that they didn't execute. We didn't execute on our side, but they definitely did. Brant Sherwood talks about that, and all the fans talked about that too. We could see it on the ice. You know, you talked about Scott Romaker not being able to, I mean, almost every single puck that went to his stick jumped over it. It was like a hot bean, or, you know, one of those jumping beans going over his stick almost every single time. And I'm not picking on Scotty, because it happened to a lot of guys in Saturday's game. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in just a few seconds. But Taylor, before we get into the meat and the potatoes of our show, who would have thought that 2 games at the end of January would now mean so much? And those 2 games I'm talking about is the 23rd and the 24th against the Pee Dee IceCats, the team that we will be facing in the finals. And we faced Parker Rutherford, the goaltender. Now we're going to be facing Brendan Colgan, the goaltender.
Yeah, I don't know if we can really close in on what happened in January as kind of what could happen here. Mm-hmm. I mean, maybe to some aspect. I don't know if their lines are, you know, some of the lines are still the same, but I do know like they brought in quite a few different people, because I know that was a ton of the comments that I've been seeing is, oh, we're not the team that you guys saw in January. And, you know, you guys haven't faced these guys yet. And, well, that could be true. You know, we went against Topeka. We've never even seen most of them. You know, we didn't get to see that team at all. And aside from Clark and a couple other their players, you know, we saw a handful of times throughout the year. So right. You could probably say the same thing about that. And I'm not, like, trying to compare Topeka to Pee Dee in any way. I'm just saying, you know, it's kind of hard to judge how a team's going to do against somebody if they don't, like, if you're not consistently facing them. Yeah. Like, if you took us in Danbury again, and you're like, oh, well, you guys, you know, you guys are going to do the semifinals, and then we'll see who goes from there. Then you could sit there and be like, oh, well, you can break down every game, and that's probably, you know, a close matchup of what you might get. But yeah, it'll definitely be interesting. I think Colgan is an interesting goalie. I'll leave it at that. I don't really. I have my own opinions and thoughts about him from previous years with Twin City. And so, yeah, I think it'll be interesting. I can't wait to dive more into it this you know, later on in the week.
Yeah, no,
really give my thoughts.
100%. It'll be interesting to see. I mean, they do have Alexander Legoff on that team, who obviously played in Danbury, and he's a very high-skilled, talented player. They have the two brothers that I can never pronounce their names correctly, and I'm going to have to try before Wednesday when we record our next show to make sure that I get it right.
Marcinkiewicz.
Yeah, okay, good enough. And and because they're good. They're very good. One just came back down from the SPHL to be able to play for the Pee Dee IceCats, so they'll be on the team. There are some good players on that team. We know that. Now, they did move out Trevor Lord, who was obviously on Topeka, so we won't see Trevor Lord, who was there earlier in the season.
Oh, bummer.
Yeah, I know. So it'll be very, very interesting. We'll get into a lot more conversation about the Pee Dee IceCats in our next episode of the Power Play Post Show. I do want to say that we do have two great guests that I'm going to be recording with tomorrow, that we're going to split up those interviews and play part of them on Thursday's telecast and then part of them on Sunday's telecast. But there's going to be two players. I'm going to do about 20 minutes each with both players, and then we'll do 10 minutes talking about the games coming up against Pee Dee, what they remember from in January, what they're looking forward to about the finals, and then the last 10 minutes, which you'll hear on Sunday from both of those interviews, will probably be just more fun stuff, talking about their season, what they're going to miss about Binghamton when it's all said and done, blah, 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 that kind of stuff. We'll get that for you. So the next two episodes will have at least those two things going for it, two interviews with two players. I'll announce those tomorrow after I've recorded with them at practice, because the Black Bears will be practicing on Tuesday and then traveling on Wednesday to Florence, South Carolina, probably practicing on Thursday on that ice because they haven't practiced on that ice yet. And then, of course, they will play the game on Friday, May 1st will be the first game. That's at 7:15. So we'll get you all ready for all that when we get to the Thursday episode, which maybe I'll release Wednesday night once we're done recording. We'll see how things go. But the Power Play Post is available on all major podcast platforms, including Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Pocket Cast, YouTube, Amazon Music, and iHeartRadio. Just search Power Play Post Show on your favorite app, and don't forget to subscribe. Join the conversation on Facebook. Search for Power Play Post Show and become part of our community. Be sure to like, comment, share our latest episodes with your friends. Looking for everything Binghamton Hockey, visit binghamtonhockey.net. And coming up on this episode of the Power Play Post Show, we've already talked about it, and you've already heard a little bit of it. But from the Black Bears, we have head coach Brant Sherwood and, of course, forward Mac Jansen on the show.
Power Play Post Show fans, do us a quick favor. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring that notification bell so you never miss an episode of the show. And if you're listening on Spotify, make sure you're following the podcast and leave us a rating. It's completely free to do. It takes 2 seconds, and it tells YouTube and Spotify to push the show out to more Binghamton Black Bear fans and more hockey fans just like you. Drop a comment, too, if we read them, and we love hearing from you.
All right, so Taylor, let's get into Game 2. We obviously had already covered on Friday Game 1, where the Black Bears did get a 1-0 win in Port Huron. A great performance, obviously. And the funny thing is they flipped the script. And if you think about it, last year, Game 1 in the semifinals, we lost to Port Huron 4-0. And then we go into Port Huron. And again, arguably, I'll admit it, better team this year than they were last year. We flipped the script and got a 1-0 win against them in their home arena. But then we came back to Binghamton, and that's when Saturday happened.
Yeah, I definitely think they flipped the script there, and it was kind of interesting because, I talked about wanting to win in Port Huron so bad to kind of keep their fans quiet, and then they turned around and did the same thing to us on Saturday.
Yeah. And this loss that we're about to talk about, Taylor, first loss in Binghamton Black Bears history at home in the playoffs.
Oh, that's crazy, but it was bound to happen at some point.
Yes.
Prowlers take game 2 in Binghamton, the first loss in Black Bear playoff history at home, as Bobby just mentioned. April 25th, 2026, Visions Veterans Memorial Arena, Commissioner Cup semifinals, game 60 of the season. Port Huron Prowlers versus the Binghamton Black Bears. The Port Huron Prowlers struck first in a tightly contested opening period, taking a 1-0 lead over the Binghamton Black Bears in game 2 of the Commissioner Cup semifinals at Visions Veterans Memorial Arena. Port Huron capitalized on its first power play opportunity of the night after Kyle Steffen was assessed a delay of game penalty at the 4:54 for continuing to play without his helmet. Just 24 seconds later, Reggie Millette found the back of the net, beating Dominic Tomei at the 5:18 mark to give the Prowlers the early advantage. Grayson Dietrich and Ryan Alexander earned the assist on Millette's 4th goal of the postseason. Despite trailing on the scoreboard, Binghamton controlled much of the play throughout the period, outshooting Port Huron 11-6. Reed Cooper was sharp early, turning aside all 11 Black Bear shots to preserve the lead. The Black Bears were without forward Mac Jansen, who was late scratch after scoring the game-winning goal in Game 1. However, they welcomed Gavin Yates back, who returned to the lineup after missing the past 4 weeks. Tensions also began to rise late in the frame. Reggie Millette was sent off for slashing at 16:20, giving Binghamton a power play opportunity, but the Black Bears were unable to convert then. With just 21 seconds remaining in the period, John Larkin and CJ Stubbs exchanged words after the whistle, resulting in matching unsportsmanlike conduct penalties after one period. Port Huron holds a 1-0 lead despite Binghamton carrying the edge in shots in territorial play.
Okay. Scratches in this game were Matt York, Sam Holy, Chicho Laughlin, Mason Hohen, his nickname is Iceman, Tyler Schwint, Mac Jansen, Emerson Emery, CJ Happert, and Brandon Chance. Now, of course, Mac Jansen, that was the surprise. Starters in this game was Ivan Bondarenko, CJ Stubbs, Jacob Shankar was on the line with Stubbs and Bondarenko, and then Dorazio, Stone, and Tomei were that. I want to go back to one of the first things that you said about the first period, and that was the penalty to Kyle Steffen that allowed Reggie Millette to eventually get the power play goal 24 seconds in. This was one of those times where I think we kind of really thought that this was a mistake on the Black Bears and a mistake by Kyle Steffen, who tried to kind of interact with one of the Port Huron players and unfortunately put the team in a bad spot a little bit early on in the game. I love Kyle. I'm not calling Kyle out in any way, shape, or form, but this was kind of like a precursor of how this game seemed to go for the Black Bears. Because not only did this happen, his helmet was off, he tries to interact with one of the players, they get the penalty, Reggie then scores, but it seemed like after this, it led to like the pucks were all over the place. You know, you had already mentioned about Scotty Romaker's. Every time the puck tried to touch Scotty Romaker's stick, it bounced somewhere else. So I think it was like one of those things where, you know, you don't really realize that, okay, yeah, all right, Kyle did what he did, and then we give up a goal. But it felt like that led to so many other things that were happening, and none are connected to each other, right? I'm not saying that because Kyle did that, all those other things happened. Those other things happened because they happened, but it's like it started that long line of like, oh, crap, they just don't have it in this game.
Oh, yeah, it felt like the domino effect where they weren't technically related, but it just seemed like if nothing was working, it was going to keep going down the line that way. Yeah. And it certainly started with, Steffen there. And of course, we're not, calling him out. We're not saying anything bad about him. No. But in my opinion, it was a dumb penalty. It's the dumbest penalty to take in hockey. And I will say that to anybody. I would lose my mind, basically. When your helmet comes off on the ice, you have to get out. It's just in my mind, because I'm a huge safety person. Safety is like my number one. Like I nitpick about it so much, and it's because Jeremy races and people that I love race, and I just like. There was a guy that one of his buddies, he didn't have racing shoes and racing gloves. I went and bought them for him. Wow. So safety is my number one thing. I can't know that somebody's out there doing unsafe things for silly reasons. Like your helmet came off, just get your butt to the bench, just go. And you did that silly little thing, and then you get a penalty, and then we get scored on. And I was like, here we go. the silliest penalty to take in hockey. And now this is how our game is going to go. And then just all the puck luck was not existent.
Yeah.
And poor Scott Romikers he's probably going to tape the puck to his stick the entire week. So this whole next series, he can actually touch the puck. Because I swear to God, every time it came to him, it bounced right over. And I was like, how does it happen every time? I'm pretty sure it happened to him both games. And I'm pretty sure every time it was Scott Romikers. I felt so bad for him because it seemed like it didn't matter where he was on the ice. That puck was bouncing over his stick, and it did not matter. That puck did not care.
No, and I think everybody's puck and stick work were definitely a lot better on Sunday than it was on Saturday. That was evident. You can tell that. But yeah, it started with that penalty. It's like, oh wow, okay, that's not the penalty you want to take, but it is what it is. We're gonna move on from that. The return of Gavin Yates to the lineup was a nice surprise. I did not expect it, Taylor, I promise you. But don't be fooled. He was listed as the 10th forward, and playing time would have been limited except for that Jansen was the late scratch. Jansen was listed on the roster lineup sheet. So if you went and you saw what the Black Bears posted in their social medias, he was there, but Frank Perney announced him as a scratch. Now we'll see how the lines get shuffled, if it's true, it was. And it looked like Shankar was inserted into the top line with Bondarenko and Stubbs. I'm going to be the first one to say this. It didn't work. Shankar has played up there before. This time it just didn't work in this game. And then Emery was inserted into the game, and Emery ended up being the 10th forward, and Gavin went on to the Kirkby-Swain line, which I thought at times looked good on Saturday. And partially because of that is because you could probably chop Gavin's head off his body and his legs would still skate so beautifully on the ice. I'm not even kidding you. I truly, truly believe that. Like, he could be a chicken with his head cut off on the ice, and people would be like, man, that chicken can skate like a son of a bitch, right? It's like, he's just such a great skater. So that comes natural to him. But the lines were a little tweaked, and I feel like going forward in this game, as we talk about it, I think the lines just did not execute like they normally do. And I think it's because in the regular season, putting Shankar up there, and even if he did it for a whole weekend, by the end of the weekend, it's working perfectly. In that one particular game on Saturday, it did not.
Yeah, it's definitely true. And I think kind of as the game went on, you kind of saw them, just kind of plugging guys into different lines and seeing if anything made a difference. And it really was not going our way at all. And to the point about Gavin, that's 100% true, because the people behind us, every time Gavin hits the ice, and I mean every single time, all they do is talk about, man, he's got some speed, look at him go. And then it's just everybody wants him to score so badly because of how well he moves on the ice and his ability to take it in zones. And you're almost like, you get you're like so upset when he's going in and he's got three people on him and they somehow get him off the puck, and you're like, because he was coming in and it was going to be so cool and it's going to be a beautiful execution. And even if he missed the net, everybody would have been so hyped about it. And then, it gets kind of like pushed off the puck or pushed off. And it's one of those things where you're kind of like, you get so upset about it. But yeah, Gavin was definitely a sight to see, and I was very shocked by it, as you were as well. So it was awesome to see at the same. And I kind of feel, because part of me was like, I was so excited to see it, but then another part of me was like, I was kind of worried just because of what happened in this last game. You don't ever want to see a player get injured in any aspect, but it was one of those things where you're excited, but at the same time you're kind of nervous.
Yeah, the Reggie goal was a good setup and a shot that Tomei just could not catch up with. This is what the Prowlers needed, and Cooper will now dig in and stop everything he can. And I truly believe that, and he kind of basically did. The Black Bears could not sustain pressure, at least in front of the net, like in that middle part of the ice. Also, this being an elimination game, the referees are not going to call minor penalties unless it's blatant and stops the play. So when you saw the slashing on Sunday, that was called. That was because, again, you've got a player going in on a goaltender. If you're going to reach around and slash him, they're going to call that. They might not call it somewhere else on the ice, but they're going to call it there. So you just have to just get used to that. The referees are just not going to call things unless they have to. Prowlers came in and won that period. They didn't outshoot. They did out cash in on the Black Bears. With the roster moves just moments before the game, the Black Bears need to get the lines flowing in the second period. And, I think everybody got a little bit better as the game went along, but not good enough. Not to the level of, and I hate to say this because I know this is a pollen thing, they didn't play Black Bears hockey throughout this game. Is that fair?
Oh, no, that's definitely fair.
Okay. Power play opportunities. Binghamton was 0 for 1. Port Huron was 1 for 1. That was a power play goal that Reggie scored. Shots on goal. Binghamton 11. Port Huron 6.
I was more upset about them getting scored on as a penalty kill because it took our penalty kill from less than 100%.
Yeah,
I was so upset about that.
I know.
I really like the thought of a penalty kill being 100% through the entire playoffs. That would have been awesome to see.
And now we've given up 2 because you'll talk about that here in a second.
The Port Huron Prowlers extended their lead early in the second period, but the Binghamton Black Bears responded late to cut the deficit to 1 heading into the third. Just 1:29 into the middle frame, Port Huron capitalized on a costly turnover behind the Binghamton net. Reggie Millette quickly found Bobby Price in front, and Prowlers' leading scorer made no mistake, beating Dominic Tomei to double Port Huron's lead 2-0. The Black Bears continued to push back, and their persistence finally paid off late in the period. With 4:22 remaining, CJ Stubbs netted his 5th goal of the postseason, finishing off a strong offensive sequence to bring Binghamton within 1. Dan Stone and Tyson Kirkby collected the assist on the play. Port Huron immediately challenged the goal, but after review, the officials upheld the call on the ice. The unsuccessful challenge resulted in a bench minor for delay of game, giving Binghamton a power play opportunity. However, the Prowlers' penalty kill came through in a crucial moment to maintain their lead. The intensity only escalated in the closing minutes. Matching roughing minors were assessed to Matt Graham and Jesse Anderson at 19-18, and just 7 seconds later, John Larkin was sent off for high sticking, setting up an early third period power play for the Black Bears. Port Huron outshot Binghamton 14-11 in the period, but the Black Bears still hold a slight 22-20 edge in shots through 40 minutes. With the Prowlers leading 2-1, and the stage is set for a dramatic third period as Binghamton looks to even the score and keep its perfect postseason record intact.
Which we know did not happen. All right. You could see throughout the second period the Black Bears being outplayed at both ends of the ice. The shots on the Black Bears were perimeter shots, a few grade A's, but nothing Cooper couldn't stop. The Stubbs goal was reviewed, and I get the review of it. If that was Chris Paulin asking for the review because of something he saw, fine. But the theatrics of Cooper was so over the top. And this is the thing I want to say. I want. If you're a Port Huron fan, you're actually listening to the show. I'm sorry that you're actually listening to the show, because you probably shouldn't, because you should be somewhere in a dark room, really kind of grieving the not winning against the Binghamton Black Bears for the second straight season in the semifinals. And that's not me being mean. I probably would be doing the same thing if I was just a regular fan too. So if you're listening, man, you really want punishment to hear us talking about your team, getting basically knocked out of the playoffs. But for Cooper, who I think is a great goaltender, and I put him up there in the last 3 years, the goaltenders that I've seen in this league that have excelled really well, which is like obviously C-Mac and Brian Wilson when he was playing with Danbury. Now he's in the SPHL. There's a few other goaltenders, and Cooper is definitely up there that I feel is a very good goaltender. But going out to the center ice when you should not leave your crease at any given time, like you don't want people in your crease, don't leave your crease. Don't go behind your net and engage with Tyson Kirkby because you don't like something, and because they're not calling it. They didn't call it. They didn't call it a few different times when he left his crease in this series to go argue stuff. You didn't see Dominic Tomei do that. And you know what? For the last 2 seasons before this, you didn't see Connor McAnanima do that either. And Cooper was doing it in a way like he's the captain of the team and just marching around and talking to anybody that he wants and doing whatever he wants. And there are unwritten rules about goaltender and not engaging with goaltenders and doing stuff with goaltenders. And then there's, unwritten rules that just for some reason the referees were letting him get past. But his theatrics for me, were getting a little over the top. And I'm not afraid to say it, right? Because I would sit down and have a nice, great conversation with Cooper and interview him, and I'd probably bring it up. I was like, hey, you leave your crease a lot to go talk and do stuff like that. I would literally legitimately say that to him. But I thought it was very over the top. Taylor, your thoughts?
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I had a conversation with somebody else about, everybody, kind of looks at Tyson and he gets labeled as this big crybaby throughout the entire league. And I still don't understand why. And I even said this to the person I was talking to. I'm like, when Tyson is over, like, talking to the refs, like he's supposed to do, he wears a letter for a reason. He talks to the refs to get, to understand what's going on so he can go back to the bench and let them know what's going on. That's literally what he's there to do. But outside of that, if he's talking to them for any reason and he doesn't like what's going on, he turns around, rolls his eyes, shrugs, and skates back to the bench. He does hardly anything ever.
Yeah.
And yet you watch Cooper, and he was having hissy fits about the littlest things and everything that was going on. You could just see he was throwing a fit. And at one point, I think it must have been during the second period. And, or no, it must have been during third period because he was on our end.
Yeah.
And he was just giving it to the ref and he wouldn't stop. And I was like, at what point do you tell it? Like, at what point does it become something? Because if that was one of our players that was constantly doing that to the ref, they would have gotten a 2-minute unsportsmanlike.
Yeah.
Or they would have gotten kicked out. They would have done something because he didn't stop running his mouth. We've seen that happen with Stubbs. We've seen it happen with Tyson, and even Yates, where they're like, okay, stop talking, go to the box.
Yeah.
It doesn't, like, at what point do you draw the line with goalies that they're not allowed to do stuff? Yeah. And the other thing that I noticed, and I don't know, like, I have no, like any kind of reasoning or explanation or like any basis behind this, but I noticed that anytime something happened and the refs or the linesmen came in to separate them or whatever, they only grabbed the Binghamton players to take them away.
Yeah.
They weren't grabbing Port Huron and skating them away. They only came in and they would grab the Binghamton player and push him away, whether he started it or didn't start it. It didn't matter. But it was always them grabbing the Binghamton players and skating them away. And I just thought that was a weird thing. Like, and again, I'm not like, I don't blame the refs or say anything about the refs when it comes. It's whatever. When it comes to playoff hockey, I'm not even looking at them. But see, what Cooper was doing a couple of those times, it was almost comical, like almost to the level of Babin comical. Like, he wasn't out there doing stuff that Babin does, that everyone, kind of puts label on him, but the theatrical part of it, definitely.
Agreed. Yeah, that's why I wrote that. Theatrics was his ploy in this series a little bit. And I don't think he needs to do that. I really don't.
Well, and part of me wonders because, the players on both teams were doing whatever they could to get under the goalies. They wanted to get, under their nail and really bug them. And, that's Tyson's thing. That's Sorota's thing. That's a bunch of our players do it. A bunch of their players try to do it. And I think it started to work. I think Cooper started to break down and we eventually got a goal on him. And then that's when it started, like the theatrics just came out of nowhere. Like, he was this strong, solid goalie until you got that goal on him. And then all of a sudden it was like, you saw him just becoming unhinged about things almost. And I think Port Huron was almost coming fed up with the fact that they could not do that to Dominic.
Yeah.
And I know that's kind of something you and I talked about was like, and this is absolutely nothing against Dominic, but we kind of said one of the differences between Connor and Dominic is that Connor has this look about him where if you look him in the eyes, he looks like he's going to kill you.
Yeah.
And I said, like, if you're skating down to him and you get met with those eyes, he looks like he's gonna you're gonna die. Like, that's what's gonna happen.
Right.
He has that like stone cold look about him.
Yeah.
Where Dominic does not have that. He is so laid back and just this like calm energy about him.
Yes.
And it like nothing you do is gonna get to him at all. Where Connor, if you said something to him, he'd probably say something to you back. It's not gonna affect him at all.
No.
But Dominic you could say whatever you wanted to him and he's just gonna skate back to the bench and be completely unfazed by it whatsoever.
Yeah. And it's funny.
I think that's something that kind of Cooper was lacking a little bit.
Yeah. So back to the review. Each team has a tablet in which they have a short amount of time to look at it and then decide if they want to challenge it. He left his crease for an extended amount of time, which could have been a penalty. It wasn't a media break. So he wasn't able to just come over and talk to the referees during the media break. This wasn't a media break. the referees were very lenient with Cooper all night long, letting him cross-check players to the back, leave the crease to go behind the net, not during the play to engage with others. With it being the players, as a coach and a player, you hope the referees would allow that to a degree. But I did notice this for sure throughout the series between Cooper and just what he was able to do. The period was frustrating, as we've all seen all season. The Black Bears play better and even adjust during the periods or intermissions. And we saw some adjustments, they just didn't work. So the power play opportunities in that period was Binghamton was 0 for 2 and Port Huron was 0 for 1. And shots on goal, Binghamton 11, Port Huron 14. So it was 22-20 at the end. Let's get into the third period because a little bit more scoring in this period.
The Port Huron Prowlers responded with an statement performance in the third period, pulling away for a 5-1 victory over the Binghamton Black Bears to even the Commissioner Cup semifinal series to 1 game apiece. With the game hanging in the balance, a key turning point came midway through the period when Jesse Anderson was called for a tripping. At 10:51, Port Huron capitalized on the ensuing power play as Grayson Dietrich buried his first goal of the postseason at 11:47. Austin Federley and John Larkin assisted on the insurance maker, giving the Prowlers a 3-1 lead. Binghamton looked poised in first response when Port Huron was assessed a delay of game penalty shortly afterward, but instead it was the Prowlers who delivered the decisive blow. Jamie Bussell broke free, short-handed, and scored at 14:45 with assists from Austin Federley and goaltender Cooper Reed, extending the lead 4-1 and silencing the home crowd. Facing a 3-goal deficit, Binghamton pulled Dominic Tomei for the extra attacker. With more than 4 minutes remaining, the Black Bears generated several quality opportunities, but Cooper remained steady. Ryan Alexander eventually sealed the win with the empty net goal at 19:04. Despite outshooting Port Huron 14-5 in the third period and 36-25 overall, Binghamton could not solve Cooper often enough. The Prowlers goaltender was outstanding, turning aside 35 of 36 shots in a stellar performance. The series is now tied 1-1 and will head to a winner-take-all Game 3 on Sunday. A trip to the Commissioner Cup Finals will be on the line, with the victor advancing to either the Columbus River Dragons or the Pee Dee IceCats.
Yeah. Simply put, the Black Bears were not able to crack Cooper in that game. And let's be honest, they only cracked him for 1 goal in Game 1. And then in Game 2, they only cracked him for 2 goals as well. So, he played well. He was good all throughout the series, without a doubt. They were not able to break free from the man-on-man defense that the Prowlers played, or when they collapsed into the slot to take away the middle of the ice in front of Cooper. To be fair, the Prowlers needed that game. They executed well, and the Black Bears did not. It's that simple. The last goal for the Prowlers was the right call. The player who would have scored if not taken down at the empty net. Those are clearly written in the rules in many leagues. So when we took down the one player before the last goal, what was it? John Larkin that scored it? I can't remember now.
I think so.
It was John Larkin, right? We took him down before he had a chance to actually get the puck into the net. It would have gone into the he would have scored the empty netter. So they definitely give him that. So that was a good goal for them. So the Black Bears could have been thrown off with Mac Jansen not able to play. I still think that was part of this whole Game 2 vibe. The lines were shuffled, and I'm not sure if Shankar fit well on the top line. I'll say it again, or Yates was ready for the second line minutes. It's not a knock on either player, but my opinion, when you're a coach and you have to make these decisions late on game day, sometimes they work and sometimes they don't. It's that simple. I think the Prowlers played the game they had to, and the Black Bears did not. That's pretty clear. Game 3 is a Game 7, essentially. Winner moves on to the finals, and the loser is done for the season. Power play opportunities, Binghamton 0 for 2. Port Huron 1 for 3. Shots on goal, Binghamton 14 and Port Huron 5, which is just insane to me. And they still, got those couple goals. Binghamton 36, Port Huron 25. And Taylor, this has got to be one of the shortest stat lines you've ever had to read.
I know. It's as much as it did suck to lose that game, I'm so happy that I don't have to read 85 names right now. And the amount of 2 points and 3 points. And because let's be honest, there was so much of that throughout this season.
There was.
So I think maybe they played this game for me and cut me a little bit of a break right here.
Fair enough.
Black Bears fall to Prowlers 5-1 in Game 2. CJ Stubbs scored his 5th goal of the playoffs, the only tally for the Black Bears. And Dominic Tomei saved 20 of 24 shots in the loss. With the loss, his record drops to 3-1 in the playoffs.
All right. So coming up next here on the Power Play Post Show, you're going to get all of the audio from our conversation post game after Game 3, which we'll talk about after you guys get to hear from these guys. So we'll give you a little bit of break. You'll get to hear the post game audio. Some of it you've already heard, whether it be through BNG's social media pages, or if you were listening earlier in the show when we played a little bit of it as well. You'll get to hear all that from Brant Sherwood and Mac Jansen coming up next, right here on the Power Play Post Show.
Hi, this is Don Biggs from the 92-93 Binghamton Rangers. Hi, this is Brandon Buczynski.
This is Grady Wittenberg, the voice of the Binghamton Senators, and you're listening to the Power Play Post Show.
Here is another Power Play Post Show interview exclusive with Bob Howard.
Mac, I'm going to start calling you Big Gold Mac if you keep this up. Talk a little bit about tonight and how important it was that you cashed in, especially after being out last night.
It was big. Whenever you're watching your team out there, kind of get it handed to them, it sucks. I wanted to be on the ice with my brothers, with my teammates, with the guys that were battling. And all I wanted to do tonight was come in and set a tone, bring energy to the guys, let them know that, we were the best team in the league all year. We still are the best team in the league. All we have to go out and do is work hard, and the rest will take care of itself.
Can you talk about that first goal?
It's electric. The shift after we get one disallowed that probably should have been a goal, but, it's whatever. We have a resilient group. We don't stop. We're going to keep coming. We're going to go until that last buzzer rings, and, that's a big goal. I told Bondarenko before the game, him and Stubbs, they know to find me. I'm the shooter, and that's what they did.
You mentioned resiliency. How did this team bounce back so quickly after a disappointment last night?
I think Brooksy can probably attest this better than me. We had back-to-back losses once, maybe twice this year. So, we're just a resilient group. We're a very veteran group. We know how to put the past behind us and just live in that moment. We knew it wasn't about getting to the finals. It wasn't about last night. Everything was about tonight. We were all in tonight as a group effort, and the results show for themselves.
And your second goal. Talk about that.
That's fun. I can confidently say we have the best power play in the league, and those guys, like I said before, they just kind of know to find me, and we were communicating in the locker room. Fresh ice power play, nothing better than that, and we've been hot lately, so we live for those moments and cashed in on it.
What does it mean to you that you and a couple of the other guys like Bondarenko come in and the mission was help this team become a three-peat type of team? How big is this to now get that chance to do it?
It's awesome. It's a great feeling. Obviously, the job's not done yet. We'll, cherish it tonight, cherish the hard work we've put in tonight. But tomorrow morning, it's turning the page and on to the next thing. The job is not finished yet. We want to win the finals. We want to win the league. We want to be the best in the league. We think we are, and we're here to show that. It doesn't really matter who we play. We're ready to go against anyone. And, we're excited for the next task.
Brant mentioned you're banged up right now. How important was it for you to be out there on that ice tonight?
I promise you this. He texted me last night. Obviously, me and him are really close. He trusts me, in my opinion. He knows I know my body, and I get a little emotional about it because he puts so much trust into me, and all the guys trust him so much. It's he just texted me last night and said, go up to the rink in the morning, give it a try, see how you're feeling. And I didn't even text him back because I knew I was playing in this game tonight. Nothing was going to keep me out of this game.
The adrenaline probably pushed you through, correct?
Absolutely.
Coach, 3 times now to the finals. Talk about the feeling and what you told the guys after.
Just, creating a dynasty here, and just so proud of these guys and their effort. I thought we outplayed them, 55 out of 60 minutes. We had a little dip in the beginning of the second, but other than that, it was a relentless effort all around, and just super proud of these guys, how they bought into our team concepts.
Well, what did you tell them after the game?
I said, this is Black Bears hockey.
Really?
Yes. Yeah. We had great ozone rotations. We were moving the puck well. and a lot of good D-to-D that we want to exploit them on. We had a lot of weak side opportunities that we want to take advantage of tonight.
You fall behind early. How did this team kind of stay with it and not let that, turn into 1 or 2 goals, for the opposition? How did this team bounce back after falling behind so early?
I think it was the waves of shifts that, even though they scored, I thought we carried the momentum the entire time, and they were on their heels. They didn't deter. They didn't let the doubt creep in. That's basically it. They believed the entire time, even after that kind of fluke of a goal.
The game yesterday obviously was probably not one that we would have expected, you or even the team. What did you say after that game to get them ready for this game? Because this was a different team tonight versus the other night.
I just told them we had to move on quickly. Obviously, it was a terrible execution. We couldn't complete a pass. We couldn't handle a puck. And I think the nerves really got to us with our big crowd. A little lighter crowd today. The boys handled it well, but we're going to have to sort that out with the fans. Maybe hold them up for a little bit until we get easy in the first.
What can you say about Matt Jansen stepping up 2 huge goals tonight?
Unbelievable. This guy called me over the summer and didn't have a place to go, which is astonishing because he's one of the best leaders I've ever came across. I played with him back in Roanoke, and he has a pretty bad injury. And he stepped up today. He ignored it. He let the adrenaline take over, and he's Mr. Clutch. The way he capitalized on those goals and his passion for the game, just all emotion, and just so proud of that guy.
And what about Tomei? Because yesterday may not have been his best game either, not just the forwards or the defensemen, yet he turns around and has a stellar performance tonight.
Well, with our group, it's all about how we respond, how we pick up ourselves, after we're down. So, it's astonishing what Dom could do. I've been trying to ignore him a little bit more lately and just stay out of his way. Usually I'm praising him a ton. I've been quiet church mouse with him. So after the game, I just told him, once again, another guy I'm proud of.
I just want this answer because it's something I've been thinking about. I know the fans talked about it after last night. There was no thought in your mind to ever put Connor McAnama in, correct?
No, just because Dom's gotten us here. And there's a sense of loyalty that you have to believe in their guys. Maybe when, maybe it wasn't their best game, it was an average game. So I didn't want that to steer. And Connor would say the same thing. He's told me multiple times, this is Dom Nett, and he's here to support us.
And my question is, just how hard is it? People watch you guys all season. You have a great record. You beat teams. To get to 3 of these in a row, just how special is that? And I don't think people realize maybe how hard it is to do that 3 years in a row.
It's harder each and every year. I mean, you got a bigger target on your back, and the fact that we're able to stay dialed in for a full season and be able to get over these little adverse humps that, these guys don't bat an eye. They rise to the challenge, and it's pretty cool. It's pretty special what we've done here, and how the community's rallied behind us as well.
Last season, you guys also defeated the Port Huron Prowlers. They were totally different games than what we saw. And the Prowlers are a better team now than they were, last year. Talk a little bit about the difference in this year's series win against the Prowlers.
I just think when they picked up those 3 Division I guys, their roster got a little bit amplified, and they had a little bit more offensive threats that we need to pay attention to. It's Larkin, Dietrich, and Alexander. They really pushed the pace of play, and they were up on our board. We had to, stay tight on them and make their lives pretty hard out there.
What's the next step for these guys to prepare for the finals?
For our boys?
Yeah, your boys.
I think you need to enjoy this because this is very hard to do. But then, when tomorrow comes, we need to move on and focus on our next opponent, whether that's Pee Dee or Columbus.
You do?
Yeah, one last question. Do you want to face Jerome Bouchard?
I do.
I know you do.
I love Boomer, and he kind of taught me a lot as far as coaching goes. I was an assistant coach for him, so I think it'd be a pretty cool matchup to face Columbus, previous team I worked for.
If you're a Binghamton hockey fan, then you need to check out binghamtonhockey.net for all your news, stats, information, the Binghamton Hockey Hall of Fame, top 10 lists, profiles, and so much more. That's binghamtonhockey.net. You're listening to the Power Play Post Show.
And welcome back, everybody, to the Power Play Post Show. That was Brant Sherwood, and before that, you heard from Mac Jansen. The reason why they were talking to us was because of the game that we're going to be talking about here in just a few minutes. But Taylor, do you have any thoughts? Because I let you listen to everything a little bit ahead of time. Do you have any thoughts about those two interviews with Mac Jansen and Brant Sherwood?
Just being able to hear from Mac Jansen was it's one of those things. It's like one of those heartfelt moments where it really kind of hits you in the stomach and really makes you understand more about these players. And then, I do agree with Brant. I would have loved to face Columbus, but that's just because I wanted to see Babin. Yeah. And, quite a few other players as well. There was Jesso, there's Thornton, there's Samaro. So, quite a few players that we know fairly well. Yeah. That would have been interesting to see here in Binghamton again. But Babin 100%, just because, again, I don't remember. The last time I can remember Babin is when he tried to fight Tyson and got kicked out of the game. That's the last game I fully remember him being in. Yeah. So it definitely, it would have been interesting. I would have loved him and Tyson to see each other again, because I don't know if they saw each other after that moment, but it definitely would have been one of those funny moments type of thing. But yeah, I like the way that, Brant talks about things, and just the way that, Jansen and Brant talk about, each other and the team and just everything. It really does make you feel like they're one huge family, and you can just tell.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Support the Power Play Post Show by subscribing on YouTube. When you subscribe and like episodes, it signals to YouTube the hockey fans are engaging, which helps recommend the show to more viewers. As our community grows, we're able to deliver more interviews, insights, and hockey discussions. Subscribing and liking is the most effective and completely free way to support the show. I actually read that for the first time the right way. Join fellow hockey fans and subscribe on YouTube today. And Taylor, we had to go to the rink and play hockey on a Sunday. Let's talk about it.
Black Bears take Game 3, a 2-1, and punch their ticket into the third straight finals. April 26, 2026, Visions Veterans Memorial Arena, Commissioner Cup semifinals, Game 3, Game 61 of the season, Port Huron Prowlers versus Binghamton Black Bears. The Port Huron Prowlers wasted no time grabbing the early advantage in this winner-take-all Game 3, striking on their very first shot of the night.
Which, let's talk about that for a second. There was 2 goals this weekend that I think ruffled your feathers more than any goals I think this whole season long. And that was the first 2 shots of Game 2 and Game 3 were both goals for the Port Huron Prowlers. And I've never seen Taylor more ruffled up than those 2 goals right there. This is something she's just not a fan of. It's like, I don't know why. And I had to bring it up. I'm not throwing you under the bus. I'm just saying you were ruffled about those 2 goals.
I mean, I definitely was. It's hard. It's when your team puts up 60 shots on net for an average during the season, and we're trying everything. We're throwing everything but the kitchen sink at Cooper, and we can't get a puck past him. But Port Huron takes 1 shot in both games, and it goes in. Yeah, it's definitely one of the things. And the second game, it was just one of those weird, wacky things where you're like, did that really happen?
Yes, it did.
It was definitely just one of those goals that you see every once in a while. So and I'm not blaming Tomei. I'm not saying anything negative about him. It was just one of those things where we're so used to our team putting up so many shots on goal. When if you look at the shot clock and we had like 11 to their 1 and the score's 1-0 for them, and you're like, what? It's definitely one of those things. I was probably as fired up about that as you were in the last 5 minutes of the game when I looked up at the press box. So
yeah, I stood up. I was fine at first, and then I just started. Then I realized I was pacing at one point, and so I stopped pacing. And then at one point, I had my hands behind my back, like I was in agony, or if I had like a migraine in the back of my head. Nope, didn't have a migraine, didn't have a headache. I was feeling it for the players. I really was. I was like, when it was 2-1, last 5 minutes of the game, and I'll be honest, I was just. I was just like everybody else in that arena. Probably the only people that didn't feel that way were probably the players on the ice because they couldn't think about that feeling at that moment.
I don't know. I think quite a few of the players were feeling it in that moment, especially some of the Prowlers, because you could every once in a while you'd catch a glimpse of that time to see how much time they had to try to either make or break this moment for them. And by the time I had looked up, you had your hands interlocked behind your head. And I looked at Jeremy and I was like, look at Bobby right now. And then at that point you had switched and you had your hand over your mouth. And we ended up watching you for quite a bit at that moment because it was just one of those things. And it's no different than when you kind of look up at Brooks sometimes and he's, doing something and he's got the rally chairs. He's doing something up there to kind of catch your attention. It was just one of those things. But yeah, I remember I think there was 9 minutes left and, his mom goes, these are going to be the longest 9 minutes of my life. And then there was 58 seconds left. And I was like, this is going to be the longest 58 seconds of my life.
Well, when there was 58 seconds left in the game, I turned to TJ from Fox 40, who was there basically filming all the goals and getting as much coverage as he could. I said to him, 58 seconds, it's going to take 4 minutes just to play these 58 seconds. He goes, if we're lucky. So, yeah. All right, let's get back to this game recap.
Just 2:11 into the opening period, Ryan Alexander found space and beat Binghamton goaltender Dominic Tomei low on the glove side, giving Port Huron a 1-0 lead and immediately quieting the crowd at Visions Veterans Memorial Arena. Despite the early setback, the Black Bears responded with a dominant territorial effort for much of the period. Binghamton controlled possession, generated sustained offensive zone pressure, and outshot the Prowlers 17-8 over the opening 20 minutes. And I think that right there, seeing the 17-8 is when I was like talking to Jeremy and I was like, this is what we needed.
Yep.
They are coming out and they are fiery today.
Yeah.
And that 17 shots on net in the opening period is kind of where I was like, this is where the tilt's going to start happening.
It set the tone.
Or at least I was hoping it happened.
I believe it set the tone.
Yes. However, Reed Cooper was once again outstanding between the pipes for Port Huron, stopping all 17 shots he faced to preserve the lead. The opening frame was played with playoff intensity, but remarkable discipline. This is one thing that I have to give props to both teams on, from, the way Port Huron was all season to how Binghamton was playing, kind of a little bit on there on Saturday, was how disciplined everybody was. And the after, whistle stuff that happened was pretty minimal. And if anything did happen, you're kind of like, okay, I'm going to let that one go. It was one of those things where it needed to happen almost.
Yep.
As neither team was assessed a penalty, the officials allowed the physical play to continue, setting the tone for what has already been a hard-fought and emotional deciding game. Tomei settled in nicely after the early goal, turning aside the next 7 shots he faced to keep Binghamton within striking distance. After one period, the Black Bears trail 1-0 despite holding a significant edge in shots and much of the play.
Okay, so now on the scratches, basically Mac Jansen was in the lineup, Gavin Yates stayed in the lineup, and Emerson Emery came out. Everybody else who was scratched in game 2 was scratched in game 3. The starters, though, for this game was Gavin Yates, Tyson Kirkby, Nick Swain, Jesse Anderson, Scott Ramakers, and Dominic Tomei. And Taylor, why is that important? We saw that throughout the season when the first line of Stubbs, Bondarenko, Mac Jansen maybe didn't have their best games. The next night, we saw this a lot. The Black Bears would go to their second line, which usually consisted of sometimes Garrett Sargis and Tyson Kirkby and Jacob Shankar, or in this case, it was Gavin Yates, Tyson Kirkby, Nick Swain. I thought this was a brilliant move by Brant Sherwood, and most people won't understand the philosophy here. Yes, you could start off with your top line. Most people do, right? But in the first 35 seconds, I think there were 35 seconds off the clock. Tyson had won the faceoff. The puck came into he won the faceoff. They lost the puck. It came into our zone, and then we got it back into their zone. And we spent the first 20 of the first 35 seconds in their zone. Whistle gets blown, plays dead. Boom, we bring in the top line. And it set the tone almost immediately of how they were going to play. And I don't think people understand enough how important it is who starts in the game for what reasons. And I think, Brant, if you're listening to this, which I hope you are on the way down, to me, that was one of the keys to this game going the way it did, was who you put on the ice first to start, because Gavin had his wheels. He got going. Tyson was able to do some forechecking, and they were, when the top line came in, they were down in front of Reed Cooper on that first stoppage of play. And that was key, I think.
Yeah, that was definitely the first thing that I noticed. Looking to our seats before the game started as they were announcing the starting lineup. And I remember Jeremy looked at me and he goes, "Oh, they're starting the second line tonight." Mm-hmm. And I literally went, "Yeah, I'm not surprised." And, I saw the same exact thing that you just talked about, is you send those guys out there in that line. Well, Gavin Yates hasn't always been on it, but, Kirkby and Swain and Yates, the way that they're able to kind of get the puck, the way they're able to get it in the zone and kind of get it set up for that area. Mm-hmm. And then you have the stoppage and play and you bring your first line out where they're, that's your scorer right there. Mm-hmm. That was that was the execution we needed in Saturday's game right there. And it happened early in this game. And I think that really, as you kind of said, really set the tone and really helped, show that Binghamton was going to control the pace of this game. And that's exactly what they did.
Agreed. The Prowlers, again, like I've said, have now scored on the first shot of the game in 2 consecutive games. The Black Bears took a lot of shots from the perimeter again against the Prowlers here tonight in the first period. They need to get more pressure in the slot. I think as the game went along, that definitely did happen. This was, in my opinion, the better first period than last night. The D1 line for the Prowlers played well, got a goal, and you can see the physical skill on the ice when they're out there. In the second period, the Black Bears need more grade A chances, which I do believe they started getting. Power play opportunities, nobody had a power play chance. As Taylor said, there was no penalties in the first period. Shots on goal.
Which is shocking.
I know. I agree. And Taylor, I don't know if that was the best way for the Prowlers to play. Now, I will say this. When you play a game 3, game 5, or game 7, which are the deciding games, obviously, winner takes all games of those types of series, generally they're played differently than the game before, when someone is down by 1 and they need to win that one to force the deciding game 3, game 5, or game 7, right? I think the Prowlers, and I'm not, and I know I've beat up Paul and Graham all season long, and I really am not trying to do that again here. I think they should have came out and played the same exact way they did in game 2. They would have had a better chance at winning. But they, like you said, played a little bit more disciplined. They were a little bit less aggressive after the whistles and things of that nature. There was one point, and this is a great point of this, in the first period, there was a scrum behind Reed Cooper, and the Port Huron Prowlers guy's hand is just up in the air like the cops were telling him to raise his hands up, right? And it's just like, okay, that's different. And that's not going to work for you, because you're going to allow Binghamton, who doesn't need to play the physical game. They don't need to play the rough stuff. They don't need to do that because they're better than everybody else in this league skill-wise, right? And what happened? You gave Binghamton the ability to have 20 minutes of building their confidence, and you still didn't change how you were going to play. And that's what let Binghamton do what it does best, which is break you down skill-wise. And this first period showed to me that the Prowlers were not going to play like they did on Saturday night. And the Black Bears were ready. They were ready for game 3, period. They were ready. And that first period showed it to me. And even though the Black Bears didn't have a goal and the Prowlers did, I knew that we were totally in it right from that moment.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like, in a sense, I feel like the Prowlers let Binghamton walk over them. And I mean that in the sense of they almost had no physical edge to them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we watched Sargis and a couple other guys just lay bodies on bodies for minutes on end.
And no retaliation.
Like every shift they took, they were taking just any chance. Like if you were against the board, you were getting slammed by Sargis. And I feel sorry for that person. And they are probably icing that spot today because he was definitely giving it to him. And there was quite a few other players that were just out there laying the bodies. And, you know, the Prowlers were doing absolutely nothing to change that.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like the last game of the regular season we played against Port Huron, where Binghamton's like, you guys said that we're a soft team, we'll show you soft. And that's like the Prowlers were giving them absolutely nothing back. And, you know, we didn't have a goal to show for it at that moment, but it definitely gave Binghamton the edge, which I think Port Huron had in Saturday's game. I think they had that penalty. You know, Binghamton had the penalty and they scored on that power play. They had all the momentum and they had all the edge.
Yeah.
They gave that all to Binghamton on Sunday, and they did absolutely nothing to kind of change that.
Agreed. Let's talk about the second period now.
The Binghamton Black Bears finally broke through in the second period, and this time there was no denying them. After a dramatic sequence midway through the period, the Black Bears pulled even at 1-1 on a goal from Mac Jansen at the 9:28 mark. Ivan Bondarenko and Dan Stone combined to set up the play, with Jansen finishing the opportunity for his second goal of the semifinal series. The equalizer came moments after an emotional swing in momentum with 10:37 remaining in the period. Jacob Shankar appeared to have tied the game for Binghamton. However, Port Huron immediately challenged the play for offside following a lengthy review.
And it was
Officials overturned the call, wiping the goal off the board and keeping the Prowlers in front.
Now,
that advantage lasted only 5 seconds.
Yeah, let's talk about this for a second because it was crazy because obviously, you know, the crowd got energized because literally Shankar scored a goal. Everybody goes nuts. Like they played music for people to dance and everyone was cheering. And then wasn't there like a goal chant? Like goal, 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 goal. And then they came out and they denied it. And it's just like, whoa, this is nuts. But man, we got to hear this in just a few seconds.
Give me 2 taps and a Ric Flair.
Because not only did Binghamton, the players, react to that, it was an emotional reaction from Mac Jansen. Let's read the rest of this.
Binghamton quickly regrouped, and Jansen made sure the Black Bears would not be denied a second time, beating Reed Cooper to officially even the score. The period also featured a pair of slashing penalties, one to Binghamton's Garrett Sargis and one to Port Huron's Grayson Dietrich. As the horn sounded, Dietrich was assessed an additional unsportsman conduct minor at the 20-minute mark, giving Binghamton a power play opportunity to begin the third period. Now, that is one of those moments where, like, there was the scrum that happened, and there was one of those moments where I was like, that's the type of thing where it needed to happen.
Mm-hmm.
It's like one of those unwritten rules in hockey where you don't shoot the puck well after the whistle, especially at the goalie. That was one thing you just don't do. And it did not take the players long to figure out they were going after him.
Well, here's the thing. I thought we were just going to have matching minors after that, right? Because in the regular season, you would normally see a couple roughing calls. Guys would come out for the third period. One guy on each side would be in there. They didn't call roughing. What was amazing is the referees immediately went for the unsportsmanlike penalty. It's not that it's an unwritten rule. There is a rule in place in the rule book that says after the whistle is blown, you do not shoot the puck at the goaltender because it can be called for unsportsmanlike conduct. And so they called that. They didn't call any of the other rough stuff after the play. And our players went after them. And let me tell you right now, I love it. I loved it. I loved everything about it. Like when Jacob Shankar, again, I go back to, what we talked about after Wednesday's game or Thursday's game, right? And I said, listen, I loved what Jacob Shankar did. And I can't wait to talk to Jacob here soon. And maybe that's a little bit of a hint of who you might hear from this upcoming week. But I can't wait to talk to him about that, because that's exactly what Port Huron did every single game we played against them in the regular season. And yet we took that to them in the playoffs by Jacob going after them. And then we even saw it during the handshake line. And that was the beautiful thing. And I know people are like, oh, you shouldn't do that in the handshake line. Well, guess what? They started it and we finished it. And I have no problem talking about that in just a few minutes. But I loved how we reacted when they shot that puck in. Because Dom was fine. He gets puck shot at him all the time. It was the principle of the thing. And that's the thing that I will argue tooth and nail for. If it's okay for Port Huron to do that for 8 games in the regular season, coming at you, if you touch their goal, you sneezed on Reed Cooper and they went ape shit, right? We do it. And it's just as good. It's very important, and I'm glad that they did that. And the best part about it is we walked out on the power play coming into the third period.
Yeah, that was definitely, one of the things I was really happy about. And I remember watching Jamie Bussell leave the ice, and he was just like basically dumbfounded that they would give him a penalty for doing that. But to kind of back up your point about the whole goaltending situation, the most insane thing that happens, and I don't know how Tyson deals with it. I truly don't, because I would have been swinging at people immediately, is I swear to God, every time he's near the crease and the whistle's blown, they come in and push Tyson into Cooper and then try to beat Tyson for touching Cooper. Like they didn't just shove him into Cooper. Yeah. And it happens every single, like if I was Cooper, I'd be swinging on my own players because they're constantly shoving another player into me when he wasn't even touching him to begin with. Yeah. But then on the other end of that, when they go skating in towards Dom and they blow the whistle, or, he makes the save and they blow the play dead, they just go in and box him out. They don't touch the Port Huron players unless they do something or say something. They just skate in and get close to Dom and just stand there. There's no pushing. There's no shoving. Nobody's shoving somebody on a Dom and, take him out. And I feel bad for Cooper. Like he plays phenomenally for his team. And then his players are constantly shoving guys onto him and trying to do rough stuff on top of him. Well, it's just ridiculous.
Well, we talk about culture in locker rooms. Well, that's the culture on the ice that's different between Port Huron and Binghamton. It just is. It's a culture of how you play on the ice, and that's what's different. All right. Did you finish reading your stuff?
Almost. I'm close. We got 2 points left.
Okay, go ahead.
Shots were even at 8 and 8 in the middle frame, but Binghamton continues to hold the overall edge, outshooting Port Huron 25-16 through 40 minutes. With the series and a trip to the Commissioner Cup Finals hanging in the balance, the teams head into the third period deadlocked at 1-1.
God, I'm excited. I don't know what happened. I can't wait to find out. All right. With 10:37 left to go in the period, Jacob Shankar scored. We already talked about that. It was ruled a no goal for offsides. We all reviewed it. And
we watched it like 16 times.
And we do agree it was the right call.
I give Tyson props. He tried for all he was worth to get over that line, but Shankar was just over it slightly before Tyson could get his foot over that line. Yeah. So it was very, very close. I can't believe they, Port Huron bench saw it, but the linesman standing on the line didn't, and they didn't call it for like a minute and a half. But Tyson, whatever. And
Tyson must be very flexible because, man, that was one heck of a stretch there. Holy crap. It truly was. He really did try. That was a pretty big stretch. Okay. And then Mac Jansen only needed 5 seconds more. What was great about that goal was his reaction afterwards. He goes skating around and he's doing the good goal thing. That was emotion right there. And if you don't understand how invested these players like Mac Jansen, the billionaire Mac Jansen, playing on this team because he's making billions of dollars according to the other team, that is emotion.
Not according to the guy on the other team, is probably making more than Mac Jansen. In all honesty.
That's actually kind of funny, right? You're right, because if you're the general manager and the head coach of the team, plus you're a player, your salary is probably 3 times bigger, overall than Mac Jansen's is. But hey, he's the billionaire. All right, so I just loved it. I loved his reaction. It was great. It was awesome. Now, the referees had put the whistle away until the 11:30 mark when they tagged Garrett Sargis with a slashing penalty. Fans weren't happy about it, but, it was probably the right call. Speaking of where the play happened on the ice.
I think Sargis at one point, he was trying to talk to the ref because Jeremy made a point about this. Sargis, I think something happened before the slashing, which caused Garrett to do the slashing.
Yeah.
Because I missed that whole thing in general. I didn't see Sargis do it at all. And I know he was trying to say something to the ref, and Jeremy's like, that ref is just blowing him off. He doesn't want to hear nothing. He wasn't going to listen to him at all. So I don't know if there was something else that happened prior to that,
right.
But it's definitely interesting.
Black Bears get their first crack at the power play with a Grayson Dietrich slashing call, which happened just shortly after that. 5:47 to go in the period. At the end of the period, the Prowlers coming in on Dominic Tomei. A shot was sent in on Dominic at the whistle. There was a big scrum. Referees tagged Grayson Dietrich with an unsportsmanlike conduct penalty. The Black Bears will start the third period on the power play. Again, opportunities 0 for 1 for Binghamton. Port Huron was 0 for 1 as well. And shots on goal tied at 8 after or through the middle 20 minutes of the game. All right, let's talk about the third period because let's be honest, this leads us to us being able to talk about a three-peat possibly.
Yeah, champions find a way. The Binghamton Black Bears punched their ticket to the Commissioner Cup Finals for the third consecutive season, defeating the Port Huron Prowlers 2-1 in Game 3 in their semifinal series on Sunday night at Visions Veterans Memorial Arena. With Port Huron already shorthanded to begin with, the period due to Grayson Dietrich's late second period unsportsmanlike conduct penalty, the Prowlers found themselves in even deeper trouble just 51 seconds into the third when Matt Graham was whistled for holding. That gave Binghamton a lengthy two-man advantage, and the Black Bears made it count. At 1:51, Mac Jansen blasted home his second goal of the night on a 5-on-3 power play, giving Binghamton its first lead of the game. Ivan Bondarenko and Austin Durazio picked up the assist on the eventual, good Lord, I can't speak today. To even the game winner. From there, the Black Bears locked things down defensively. Port Huron pushed for the equalizer, but Binghamton's structure held firm, limiting the Prowlers to just 6 shots in the final period. Dominic Tomei came up with several key saves down the stretch, finishing with 21 stops on 22 shots. The Black Bears continued to apply pressure offensively, outshooting Port Huron 13-6 in the third period and 38-22 overall. Reed Cooper was once again excellent in net for the Prowlers, but Binghamton's relentless attack eventually proved too much. CJ Stubbs was assessed a delay of game penalty with 58 seconds remaining, creating one final tense moment, but the Black Bears successfully killed off the late opportunities to secure the victory. Following the final horn, emotions boiled over, resulting in a 10-minute game misconduct to Dan Weber. With the win, Binghamton advances to the Commissioner Cup Finals for the third straight season as they continue their quest for the championship three-peat.
Now, let's talk a little bit about what Dan Weber did. So everybody celebrated after the game was over for Binghamton. Port Huron, their guys were, still on the ice. And some of them were kneeling down. They were just shocked again that this has happened for a second straight season. They started going through the line, and Timothy Organ bumps into Jacob Shankar. They don't even really shake hands. I think there was like a slap or something. And sometimes that's how some guys just do it. But there was definitely a shoulder by Timothy Organ put into Jacob Shankar. Now, Shankar's head turns around. But before he can do anything, because Organ doesn't think anything's going to happen, that's when Dan Weber goes up and basically just pushes him down to the ice. And I'm sorry, these handshakes have been happening for a long time. And I wrote the night before, or the night, I don't know which night, a Friday night when they weren't playing. I wrote a nice little article about the handshake line, what it means, the respect, the honor, and to that for everybody within the arena. Like if there was a Port Huron fan there, reach out to them, shake their hand and wish them well, because that's what these guys are going to do on the ice. But of course, one of the things that we talk about with Port Huron all the time is that they have a certain culture that they have bought into, which is fine. You know, obviously they were the second best team in the Empire Division. And honestly, I think they were probably the second best team in the league because they bought into that mindset. They bought into that we're the bullies. We're going to beat the living crap out of you. And if you can stand up and still skate and score a goal, good for you, but you're going to feel it the next day. That was their mindset. They bought into it. That's their culture. They talked about it in the post game afterwards. Paulin said, and everybody bought in, and we had this, and then all of a sudden, all the lovebirds came out and said, "Oh, it was such a great, thing." No, whatever. My point is this: one of your guys bumps one of our guys during the handshake line, and then Dan Weber did exactly what I would want Dan Weber to do. He knocked him on his ass like he should have. And you know what? Both guys should have gotten a 10-minute game misconduct, not just Dan Weber.
Yeah, I do agree that they both should have gotten, if they were going to give a penalty out for it. I mean, even if they didn't want to give him a penalty, just make him leave the handshake line and send him to the locker room if it was that big of a deal. That was kind of my thinking there is, they must have not seen what happened beforehand. I thought it was Stubbs, though. I didn't think it was Shankar when I was watching.
I'm pretty sure it was
Shankar. I could be wrong. I'm not 100% sure. I do know that it was obviously Weber who, kind of shoves Oregon there. But I know that the big thing was, well, he shoved him so hard his helmet came off. His helmet was barely hanging on his head to begin with. It wasn't like he, ripped it right off. No, it was barely hanging on there. Any movement would have knocked the helmet off. So that the helmet is not, it doesn't matter at this point.
And I want to say one last thing about this. Before anybody from Port Huron comes after me, watch the video. Tell me your players wouldn't do the same exact thing. Tell me Jamie Bussell wouldn't do the same thing. Tell me Alex Johnson wouldn't do the same thing, because they would have. So don't come at me on that one. All right. Black Bear started off the period on the power play. Mac Jansen should be called Big Goal Mac for two big important goals for Janny. I think the structure-wise in the third period, the Black Bears did everything perfectly. They limited the chances for Port Huron. They did not just back off and play defense. They still challenged in the O-zone, and they controlled the third period. Jansen was emotional in postgame, as you guys have all heard, as he was upset that he couldn't play with his teammates on Saturday night. Now the mission is to win 3 more games. The Pee Dee IceCats are the next and last opponents this season for the Black Bears, which is kind of sad, actually, who have seen them twice this season with mixed results. A hard-fought series with the Prowlers. They are better this season than they were last year. Black Bears will practice on Tuesday, and then they will leave for Florence, South Carolina on Wednesday, likely practice at the Florence Civic Center on Thursday to introduce themselves to the ice service before Game 1 on Friday, May 1st. Binghamton went 1 for 2 on the power play in the third period. Port Huron went 0 for 1, shots on goal 13-6. Binghamton led the shots on goal 38-22. Taylor, what were your final thoughts on seeing them win on home ice in Game 3 and to go to their third straight finals?
Honestly, it's truly what I expected of them. We did think it was going to happen a game sooner, but Port Huron did truly give them a good series. That was honestly a great series. I'm kind of glad that it was 3 games. It was a lot of fun to watch, but kind of watching them come back from that Saturday game where nothing was going their way to kind of pull off the things that they needed to do. Cooper definitely stood on his head for that team, and I hope they're doing everything. I hope they're giving him all massages right now or something, because he definitely deserves to be, primmed and propered. But I'm not shocked that we won the series, and I don't mean that in big head kind of thing. I just watching what this team has done all season long to kind of go into this, the mindset they have, the way this team is on and off the ice, I'm definitely not shocked to say that here we are again. It's something that we've been talking about since, the end of last season when we were at the, underneath the building there having the celebration. And, it was kind of the thing that we wanted to talk about, is that's what we were going to do. And, Brant kind of summed it up beautifully. And, so I can't say that I'm shocked to see that here we are. And, I truly, I thought Either way, I thought the cup would have stayed in the Empire, but in all honesty, I do think the road to the cup leads through Binghamton. So
Yeah.
you want to take it from us, you're going to have to really fight for it. And I think it's going to be a fun thing to talk about on Thursday. I think we're going to have a lot to talk about on Thursday or Wednesday, whatever we're going to do the show. But I think there's going to be a lot to talk about. And this Port Huron series was definitely a blast. But I truly think, in a good way, I'm kind of glad it was 3 games, and I'm really glad that Port Huron kind of really put up a fight. I think it gave us something to look at and kind of things to look on, and maybe tweak things or work on things. So
yeah,
I truly think this series was fantastic.
Well, I think what it does is, and this is why I love the fact that it went 3 games as well. I mean, I wanted it to be done in 2. Don't get me wrong. I would have loved to have
we all wanted that Sunday off.
Yeah, Sunday off. If the players wanted the Sunday off, I could have watched some playoff hockey, NHL hockey. I could have watched the Talladega race in its full entirety. So without a doubt, everybody. But what was great about the 3-game series is Binghamton played awesome in 2 games, excellent in 2 games. Yeah, they didn't score a lot of goals, they didn't have to, but they played great in 2 games. And in that middle game, teaches them more about what they need to be ready for going into the finals than the other 2 games. Yes, you want to emulate what you did in games 1 and game 3, but game 2 teaches you what happens when certain things happen in a game that may cause trouble in a game, and that you can learn the most from. So I think that was that's a pretty good factor into this going 3 games. All right, let's get the final details out of this game, and then we'll move on.
Black Bears head to the finals for a 3rd straight year. Mac Jansen scored his 3rd and 4th goals of the playoffs, tying the game in the second period at 1, and then scoring the game winner on the power play 151 into the 3rd period. Dominic Tomei was solid in net, saving 21 of 22 shots he faced, winning his 4th game in the playoffs and improving his record to 4-1. The Black Bears defeat the Prowlers in the semifinals 2-1 and go for the 3-peat, either against Columbus or PD, and obviously we know it's PD.
Absolutely. All right, cool. So coming up this Thursday in the Power Play Post Show, or maybe Wednesday night, it depends on when I decide to put it up there, but you're going to get this pretty soon. Interviews with Jacob Shankar and Cam Servone. That's right. We're going to have one of the forwards, one of the defensemen on the show. We'll talk to both of them about the playoffs coming, or the finals coming up against the Pee Dee IceCats, what they remember. Talk to them about the excitement of going into the finals and being a part of a 3-peat set of teams. Cam was here last year. This is Jacob's first year, but we'll get to talk to them about that. You'll hear part 2 of their interviews on Sunday's broadcast right here on the Power Play Post Show. And then we're going to give you the most in-depth preview, because literally when I am done uploading this show here on Monday night, I literally start working on the outline and the preview and starting gathering information and stats and all that stuff for Wednesday's show. But we're going to give you the most in-depth preview between the Black Bears and the IceCats that you're going to find anywhere right here on the Power Play Post Show. So very exciting stuff. We're going to have some stuff to talk about on Wednesday, Taylor, and it should be a lot of fun.
It definitely should be. I think we're going to have a lot of interesting things to talk about, and I'm kind of curious to see where we think, this one's going to play out, because we were pretty wrong about the Port Huron.
Well, yeah.
But
that's true.
I mean, you were more wrong. I was wrong in the general, but you were very wrong about it that first period. That was definitely a rough one for us. But
because
it's playoff hockey.
Because in game 2, before the game started, Taylor comes up to the press box to say hello, and I said to her, and I said to a couple other people, we're scoring 4 goals in this first period, and whoa, was I wrong. I was completely wrong about that first period of game 2.
What you meant to say was that we were only scoring 4 goals in the series.
Oh,
I think.
That's right. That's right. I totally forgot. Yes. All righty. The Power Play Post Show is available on all major podcast platforms. That's a great way to end the show right there. That's good. Including Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Pocket Cast, YouTube, Amazon Music, and iHeartRadio. Just search Power Play Post Show on your favorite app, and don't forget to subscribe. Join the conversation on Facebook. Search Power Play Post Show and become part of our community. Just accepted like 4 people today into the group, which is great. Looking for everything Binghamton Hockey? Visit binghamtonhockey.net. And thank you to Rob Lapolis, our MC, John Petitucci, our musical director, and from the Binghamton Black Bears, Brant Sherwood and Mac Jansen. I am Bob Howard. She is
Ty Welch.
And we will talk to you again in just a couple of days as we preview Binghamton versus Pee Dee for the Commissioner's Cup. We'll talk to you next time right here on the Power Play Post Show.
Thanks for listening to this edition of the Power Play Post Show. Be sure to tune in next week to the Box Studios Radio Network for all the latest Black Bears news and interviews from around minor league hockey. The Power Play Post Show would like to thank John Patitucci for all the music you hear on the show. You've been listening to the Power Play Post Show.